Happy Saturday afternoon, everybody. Welcome into the Alabama pregame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. I'm Simone Eli alongside Matt Scalisi. Week 6 of the college football season. Top-ranked Alabama takes a trip to Texas A&M, Kyle Field, and College Station to take on the Aggies. An Aggies team that probably isn't exactly the Aggies team that everyone thought was going to be for like 5 weeks ago when they came into the season, I think ranked 7th in the country. This has not exactly been what folks thought it was going to be there in College Station when it comes to Jimbo Fisher, whatever year he is in now as the head coach over there at Texas A&M, Matt.
Of course, it doesn't matter what year Jimbo Fisher is in at Texas A&M, Simone, because we know that he has a fully guaranteed contract.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. He gets all the money no matter what happens. But this was a game that a lot of us had circled over the summer as a big, one of the games of the year in the SEC. I think people were very highly anticipating this. Jimbo Fisher was talking kind of some smack about it going into the year and saying this was finally the year he was going to get over Bama. It hasn't gone well for Texas A&M, and it's not entirely Jimbo's fault, and definitely not entirely the team's fault. They've had some really rough injuries to have to deal with, and they're just not a deep enough program at this point to be able to deal with those injuries and pull it off without a hitch. And I think we saw a few weeks ago really humbling experience against Arkansas. Just absolutely got their doors blown off in that game. And I think it's really taken a lot of the steam out of this game for a lot of folks. We're looking at right now, I think folks heading into this game saying, ho hum, another game that Alabama's favored to win by multiple touchdowns.
Yes, and this was not, like you said, going into this season all summer, nobody really had that mentality towards this team. Injuries have played a role in that. But Saban said this week, how many guys they had returning starters. And I understand that quarterback is a big spot. When you lose your starting quarterback, that's difficult to overcome. But when you do have a boatload of starters returning, it's hard to make excuses, especially because it is Texas A&M, a team that you would expect to be able to recruit, have a decent backup situation, a decent third string situation. They really just have not had the depth. They're shown to have the depth. Now 0-2 on the year when it comes to being in SEC play with a loss to Mississippi State. I want to talk briefly, Matt, about Bama and the win against Ole Miss. I think that it was a more complete game, maybe not as much as to Nick Saban's liking, but I feel like we learned a decent amount about this team and their ability to play for 4 quarters, even though they have been kind of criticized by their own head coach for that throughout this season a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we still are not going to hear Nick Saban say that he feels like this team has given 4 full quarters of effort. But I think a pretty dominating performance start to finish for Alabama. And particularly, I think Saban always likes to see them dominate in an aspect of the game that they haven't been able to so far, which was the ground game on both sides of the ball. I think after a really rough outing against Florida for both the rushing attack on offense and the rushing defense for Alabama, they dominated in both areas against Ole Miss, and it was the plan from the get-go. They wanted to take the air out of the ball. They wanted to force Ole Miss to play at their pace, and that's exactly what they did. And Brian Robinson just took that game over. 35 something carries, something like that, and didn't seem to struggle with it. They were pretty consistent on at running the ball, and then just didn't really let Ole Miss do any of the things they like to do offensively. So I think those are promising things to see out of this team. I think it wouldn't surprise me at all, Simone, today to see Alabama go out there and play completely differently than they did a week ago. And I think that's partly to do with the fact that this team can do that. It's one of the things that makes Alabama so dangerous and so hard to beat is you can't just limit them to doing one thing and force them to play to their weakness somehow. I mean, this Alabama team can beat you running the ball 35 times. They can also beat you by throwing it over your head the entire game and airing it out like a Big 12 team. And that may very well be what they do today.
Yeah, we're going to get to Jamison Williams talking about that exact topic in just a second. Before we do, want to get back on Texas A&M. I started this pregame show talking about them not being the team folks thought they were going to be. Well, that's the last thing that Nick Saban wants to hear. It's not the sort of rat poison that he wants to listen to. He had a very clear message when it came to how his guys, what type of mentality he wants his guys to have going into today's game at 7 o'clock. Take a listen.
One of the best teams we played all year from a personnel standpoint. They just had some tough breaks. Probably, the best team in the SEC last year. Could have been in the playoffs, and they got 15 starters back. So I think we need to have great respect for what we're going to have to do to have success against this team in this game.
And Nick Saban has great respect for Jimbo Fisher, a former assistant. It's no secret that Nick Saban has never lost to a former assistant. He is 4-0 against Jimbo Fisher. 3 of those wins coming from Texas A&M, Jimbo's time in Texas A&M. But regardless, I feel as though he has a more respect for Jimbo than he maybe does some of these younger coaches. Not saying he doesn't respect Lane Kiffin and guys like that, but I feel as though he always has a friendship, kind of a level of respect for Jimbo Fisher and what he has done in his career, success-wise. He has a national championship at Florida State, maybe more so than some other guys.
I think Saban doesn't have a lot of, and he actually talked about this on his radio show this week. He doesn't have a lot of guys that he would consider peers in the coaching industry. I think he has a lot of guys who used to work for him, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he has that sort of relationship of equals with them. I think we've heard him talk about over the years that he seems to have that with Bill Belichick. Jimbo might be about as close to it as it gets just because he's been out there doing it on his own for longer. He's won a national championship as a head coach. He's coached at multiple Power 5 programs at this point. Mm-hmm. But these are kind of unique dudes in general. I think, obviously Saban specifically is. I just don't know that he has this big group of guys that he sort of relies on and chats with. And, we hear about these sort of text threads sometimes that Lane Kiffin and Kirby Smart and all these guys are in. I don't think Saban is doing a lot of text threads. I don't think
he wins more too.
No. So, but I think there is always going to be respect from Saban for a guy who has been a head coach and has won a championship. It's an elite club. There's not a lot of guys in that group that are actively coaching right now. Sure. And it's really one of the only things that you could do that could give you some commonality with Nick Saban.
Yeah. So Saban and company will look to go 25-0 against former assistants when the game kicks off at 7 o'clock. If you're just tuning in, it's the Alabama pregame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. I'm Simone. He's Matt. Alabama, obviously, number one ranked team in the country, rather. Their offense has a lot to do with that. I know you have those offensive stats, Matt. Take a look at that. And really, there's just no comparison when you look at these two programs right now and what Alabama is able to do. The creativity, the amount of versatility. Every word you can possibly think of to describe what the Tide is able to do offensively, they are doing. More than 45 points per game, over 460 yards total. It's crazy what Alabama has been able to do already this season. And there is really, it seems to be no dropping off. And you made a good point a second ago, Matt, when you said that if you stop the run, they'll kill you in the air. If you try to stop them in the air, they'll kill you in the run. That's a good way to live.
Yeah, look, and I think if you go back to those stats and look at the one area where Texas A&M has a statistical advantage, it's rushing yards per game. And to be honest, I think that kind of hides the truth of the matter a little bit, which is that Alabama, part of why they don't have more rushing yards per game is because they don't need them to score right now. Right. They did it last week, but Alabama is able to score so quickly in so many different ways. And typically it's been through the air because they have a guy that no matter what everybody wants him to be, Bryce Young is one of the best pocket passer quarterbacks in college football. Yes. So confident back there. So accurate, makes so few bad decisions. And I think he's got a great group of targets to work with right now, too. I mean, I think we knew about Jameson Williams. We saw him early in the season. I think we knew coming into the season that John Mechie was going to be a big target. But now we're seeing guys like JoJo Earl emerge from that. We're seeing the two tight ends both really turn into big, dangerous targets in the passing game as a part of this offense. And I think we're starting to see other guys pop up and make big plays in crucial situations for this team. So this is becoming another one of those incredibly deep teams in terms of the offensive skill positions. And, the running back spot for Alabama has a lot of talent still. I think they're still the envy of a lot of programs in college football, but they've been a little banged up, and they've had some guys. We know they've already lost Chase McClellan for the season to injury. They had a preseason injury to Cam Wheaton, the really talented true freshman. He hasn't really been able to show his stuff yet, but they don't necessarily need to lean on that running back group as much as other teams would, because they have so many weapons offensively.
And it's crazy to think that there was ever a time in Alabama football history, not even that long ago, where if the run game wasn't going to go, the offense wasn't going to go. That was the bread and butter. There really was no second option, at least not a second option that was as dominant as Alabama's passing game receiving core is right now. And to think that this receiving core has not really dropped off. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and put all these dudes in the same category as what we've seen lately when it comes to guys being drafted in the first round, but I mean, they're performing. It's been unbelievable. And Jameson Williams has been one of the main guys. You said we know what he's all about. We do now. I mean, coming in, we really didn't know the guy. I mean, transfer guy, what's he going to do? And wow, he's been dominant. Good for Jameson Williams when it comes to making decisions and leaving to come to Alabama. 17 receptions for 364 on the season with 3 touchdowns. He was asked this week, and it's a little bit of a longer soundbite, but I want you guys to listen in to what Jameson Williams had to say when it comes to unselfishness in the offense, kind of spreading the love around, and how beneficial it is when multiple players touch the ball.
Oh, yeah, very unselfish. I mean, we're brothers. I don't think it should be any selfishness or anyone trying to get theirs before someone else's in this offense. I think we all understand that too. So, it's very unselfish. I think it's a real challenge to a defense when they can see multiple guys touching the ball. So it's like you just can't plan on one person, that you got a game plan for one person. You kind of got a game plan for a bunch of receivers touching the ball, multiple running backs touching the ball. So I think that's real good for us on our end, and it kind of creates a problem for the defense.
So Jameson Williams there's no question that it definitely creates a problem for defenses not knowing where Bama is going to go. When you have a guy who is as intelligent as Bryce Young has been, it makes it even harder. His decision-making is fantastic. He's thrown a couple picks, but we know for a fact that one of them at least was not his fault. Matt, this guy is so smart, and he knows how to use the players that he has, the weapons that he has, to his advantage.
And I think Bill O'Brien's really deserves a little bit of credit too here for crafting and calling an offense so far that takes advantage of all of that talent that this team has. I mean, I know probably there are a lot of people who would say being offensive coordinator at Alabama is not that hard because of how much talent you have. But I still think you have to know how to take full advantage of it and put defenses on their heels constantly. I think when you have this group of talent, the standard you should set for yourself is we probably ought to be scoring a touchdown on every possession. And if we don't, we probably did something wrong as coaches. And, I think what's been interesting to see this year with this team is even without a guy like Devontae Smith and a guy like Mac Jones, who had this incredible chemistry that had been built up over years, where the ball came out so fast.
Yeah,
they're still managing to create mismatches and create open space for these receivers, even if it takes a little bit longer to develop. And I think part of that is because it's so hard for secondaries to figure out how they're going to cover all these guys. I mean, you throw in a wide receiver core that can go 3 or even 4 guys deep without really having any drop off.
Yeah.
Plus, you've got 2 tight ends, and Alabama is more and more we're seeing them go with 2 tight end sets.
Yeah.
And both of those guys are legitimate threats in the receiving game too. It becomes very difficult to know what to do if you're a secondary, if you're the guys out on the field trying to make calls and identify who needs to be where, who needs to pick up who. It's a nightmare for defenses to have to plan against this team.
Yes, it certainly is. I agree with you, Matt. I don't think it's fair to say the Bama offensive coordinator has like the easiest job in the world. I mean, the expectation that comes with that, the fact that there has been so much turnover when it comes to assistant coaches, not only the coordinator position, but I mean, position coaches. I mean, all of that matters. I mean, these guys, it's not like one dude is coaching the offense. I mean, you have multiple position coaches who have to get into these heads of these players, get them to buy in and, buy into what the program wants, what Saban wants, what the expectation is. So they've been able to do that. It's been extremely impressive week in and week out. We talked briefly about this earlier, but injuries going to play a factor in this game, especially when you look over at Texas A&M. Injuries have already been a problem. Aggies currently 0-2 in the SEC. And then, Matt, last week was no help for Jimbo Fisher's group.
No, they're really hurting right now. And I think even with Alabama down a couple of key guys, it's just going to be too much for Texas A&M to overcome, I think. I mean, you have to be at your best to beat Alabama. You have to be peaking at the right time. You have to have everything working in your favor. And Texas A&M, as Saban pointed out this week, they certainly have not had good luck. They certainly don't have things working in their favor.
Sure.
You find yourself down a couple of offensive linemen in the week where maybe the one time that Alabama is going to be down a few guys defensively, boy, is that bad timing. I mean, they still have Will Anderson out there. He's going to be wreaking havoc on this offensive line.
Sure.
And then, of course, even though Drew Sanders is not going to be out there for Alabama today, there are 2 guys competing to take his spot who were both 5-star players in high school. So, man, it's got to be frustrating if you're the team that finally thinks you caught a break against Alabama, and here you are out there facing down, 2 guys who are potential future NFL players. It's the advantage that Alabama gets from recruiting the way that they do.
Yeah.
And, I don't have any expectation that Alabama is going to truly be challenged late into this game today. I never say never on anything. I think Alabama still has to go out there and execute. They're going to have inexperienced guys out there playing significant snaps today. But I think talent-wise, this should not be a team that Alabama struggles to put away. I think they're going to have some pretty clear advantages on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. Before we take a look around the rest of the SEC and college football, Alabama an 18-point favorite over at Texas A&M on the road. And on the road at Texas A&M is a hard place to be. 100,000 plus strong at Kyle Field and College Station. It's a great atmosphere, especially when Texas A&M is in it. I think back to those like Johnny Manziel days that, when the team is in the game, it's an unbelievable atmosphere. Will that happen for very long tonight? I don't think so personally. Matt, I feel like you probably agree with me, but
yeah, got to make something happen early. I think you got to get the crowd involved by taking a chance early. I mean, we did see Lane Kiffin try to take some chances early last week in Tuscaloosa.
Lots of chances early.
They didn't work out for him, unfortunately, and that's the risk you take. But honestly, I think that kind of has to be your mentality. I think you got to go into a game against Alabama saying, we got nothing to lose here. They're Alabama. Everybody expects them to win. Let's get a little bit crazy and try to do something they're not expecting.
Yeah. All right, guys, looking around the SEC really quick. Got a tie ball game in Arkansas at Ole Miss. Arkansas was trailing in this game, now 31-31, becoming a bit of a shootout over there for the Rebels coming off that loss to Alabama, Matt.
They good to see. I guess everybody feeling feisty still after the 2 teams got absolutely brutalized by Alabama and Georgia last week. And look, they're clearly not going to be title contenders this year, but I think that middle pack of the SEC, very even this year, very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
It could kind of go any way. Like if there's a game involving anybody other than Alabama and Georgia in the SEC, I kind of don't know which way it's going to go. I think it's been a fun year so far in the league, and it's going to be really competitive to see kind of how the pecking order finishes there.
Might be everybody except for Vanderbilt, currently down 42.
Not Vanderbilt, no.
Currently down 42-0 in the Swamp. Tennessee putting it on South Carolina 38-14, but one that lots of folks, whether they want to admit it or not, will have their eyes on here in about less than an hour now over on the Plains. Auburn hosting Georgia. It'll be a very interesting game. Obviously, a little bit of no impact when it comes to like the West necessarily, but everyone wants to see what these two teams are going to do because I think a lot of folks are already forward thinking into December when it comes to what Georgia's going to look like in Atlanta.
For sure. And look, let's be honest here. The Iron Bowl is in Jordan-Hare Stadium this year. Alabama fans are going to be peeking at Auburn until they see enough to let them relax a little bit. But I don't know. Look, this game's going to be worth watching at least early, at least until we see that Georgia is as much better than Auburn as we expect them to be. But who knows, man? Crazy stuff happens over there in Auburn.
Crazy stuff has happened. A 2:30 kickoff there, and then Alabama, the top-ranked Tide at Texas A&M, will kick off immediately after both of those games on CBS. It's the SEC doubleheader for this season. So a great day of college football, not only in this state, but all throughout the country. So, guys, y'all enjoy it. You get to sit back and relax for at least another few hours before Alabama kicks off. So y'all make it to 7 o'clock tonight if you can. It's going to be a late one. But thanks so much for tuning into the Alabama Pregame Show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. I'm Simone Eli. He's Matt Scalisi. We will see y'all in the postgame show late tonight.
Medical Properties Trust. At the very heart